Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Colleges panic as Texas plans to ban DEI courses in college classrooms. Usually you'd want to let a college or a university teach whatever it is that the faculty and the professors think is appropriate to teach the students. However, DEI got so out of control that yes, now in Texas, they're making plans to ban DEI being taught in college classrooms. Coming from KUT News, Texas lawmakers signal plans to expand DEI ban into college classrooms. And they're upset already because they're making changes already at UNT. From the Texas Tribune, University of Northern Texas faculty slammed the university for removing references to race and equity in course names and in course descriptions. Professors and instructors say the university is preemptively censoring itself after administrators remove references to race and equity in dozens of College of Education course titles and descriptions. So this isn't just something they're talking about doing. This is something they've actually already done. Catherine Mansfield found out that the title of her spring semester course at the University of North Texas had been changed via email. The graduate level class that she taught to seasoned teachers who were trying to earn a master's degree in educational leadership used to be called, quote, race, class, and gender issues in education. Now it would be called critical inquiry in education. This is the professor of a graduate level class finding out without even any discussion with her that the name of her course has been changed and some of the content description has been changed as well. And we'll get into this in more detail. Texas is not playing around. Here's what one of the Republican state senators had to say. Quote, while DEI-related curriculum and course content does not explicitly violate the letter of the law that they already passed to ban DEI in public institutions, it indeed contradicts its spirit. Texas lawmakers may be looking to expand the state's ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at public colleges and universities when they convene in Austin next year. The Republican-controlled legislature approved a bill last year that prohibited DEI offices and programs at these schools. Senate Bill 17, which took effect January 1st, 2024, prompted changes at higher education institutions across the state. The University of Texas system eliminated hundreds of programs, contracts, and trainings, as well as more than 300 jobs. Dozens of those employees worked at UT Austin. Still, State Senator Brandon Creighton, a Republican from Conroe, Texas, who authored SB 17, said there's more work to be done to ensure universities are complying with his legislation. Senator Creighton went on to say this, quote, the curriculum does not reflect the expectations of Texas taxpayers and students who fund our public universities. That's a direct attack on DEI course curriculum in any public university. The hearing they had focused in part on one of the issues Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick directed the Senate to study ahead of the next legislative session. Quote, stopping DEI to strengthen the Texas workforce. Patrick told senators to examine certificates and programs at public colleges and universities that incorporate discriminatory DEI policies. He said those types of policies are out of step with Texas's workforce demands. Well, that's a very direct way of getting at it. And yeah, if you're not going to learn anything that you can actually use in a work environment, then why are public universities having these kinds of classes? Why would a college need to sponsor this, need to educate students in this? They're not going to use it in their life. Creighton, who chairs the committee, echoed that sentiment during the hearing. Quote, employers and the public value meritocracy, skills-based learning, and civic education, he said. It's our duty as legislators to equip our Texas public institutions of higher education with the mission to graduate the best and brightest students with the knowledge and skills they need to be successful. Creighton added public colleges and universities should be focused on achieving positive student outcomes, not virtue signaling or indoctrination. Quote, our public institutions of higher education have a duty to uphold campus culture that encourages diverse voices, viewpoints, and to build a trust among administration, faculty, staff, and students, not to divide them, he said. But the lone Democrat on the subcommittee, State Senator Royce West of Dallas, challenged Creighton and Patrick's characterization of DEI policies as discriminatory. West said these types of initiatives have a broad and positive impact on a variety of demographic groups. Quote, as we look at compliance with Senate Bill 17, I want to also talk about the counterbalance to make certain that we don't follow these other states in losing opportunities for underrepresented populations, he said. West added that eliminating DEI policies perpetuates racial and gender disparities that ultimately hurt workforce development, especially in a state as diverse as Texas. Of course, the real issue is really just merit. You have to focus on merit. And then if specific communities of specific genders and skin colors and sexual preferences or religions are deciding they're not having enough success in their own community or their own group, they can ask for help to build up their skills at the merit level. That's where everyone needs to be. If they don't want the assistance, they can't demand success. Alejandro Peña, a government relations specialist and policy analyst with the Texas American Federation of Teachers, said he was also concerned about the impact of Republican-led efforts to further dismantle DEI policies within higher education. He said SB 17 was not supposed to impact the classroom, but now that seems to be on the table. Yeah, this is a radical shift. This is a big next second step. It's not small. It's one thing to say, we're not going to fund public institutions with discriminatory programs for only certain students, but we're not touching your classes or your courses. You can do what you want with those. We're just not going to get involved in that, but we will get involved with funding special centers or scholarships. You can't do that legally. You never could do it legally. Cut it out. We're not doing that, but we won't touch the classes. Now they are touching the classes. But we're specifically concerned that there will be a concerted effort to expand the DEI prohibition in Senate Bill 17 to academic instruction and curriculum in the next legislative session, he told KUT ahead of the hearing. Peña also said Texas should be skeptical of the rhetoric lawmakers are using about DEI in higher education. Quote, the effort to prohibit so-called DEI programs and certificates isn't about alignment with state workforce demands, he said. It's an attempt to suppress critical and inclusive perspectives that some politicians disagree with. Well, yeah, either way, though, it's getting eliminated. Whether we like it or not, I think it's pretty extreme to start going after classes and courses. But it's true. What's the purpose of a university? Sure, you can have some intellectual thought, but people do need to actually be prepared to be successful at their jobs. Local college students also spoke out against efforts to further restrict DEI initiatives. UT Austin sophomore Genesis Britz testified the whole goal of DEI at the college level is to help students of different backgrounds feel supported and included. Yeah, we get that, sophomore, your second year in college. I don't know that you mean everyone ought to be able to speak up, and it's great that someone who's a new college student is addressing people and telling them what they think, but at the same time, Genesis does need to keep in mind that Genesis hasn't even made it out of college yet, so yes, the lawmakers are well aware of what the supposed agenda is with DEI and what the real agenda is with DEI, and that's why it's getting banned in all these colleges and universities. Genesis continued, quote, to aim to take away DEI, that is in itself a form of excluding certain groups of people that have not always been welcome in the spaces of academia, she said. She should be educated, though, that many people were not welcome in spaces of academia. However, it really is just time to up your game and get there based on merit. Enough with the DEI nonsense. Britt said there's no upside to the DEI ban and that she's seen it alienate fellow students. Kellis LaVon Myers, another sophomore, agreed. She said DEI programs help foster community and a sense of belonging. Well, that's terrific, but if they're illegal, they can't continue. But she said this, quote, I think that translates into students' lives professionally and personally, she said. So I think this is really going to limit the amount of opportunities that people get, especially people that aren't historically offered those same opportunities as their white counterparts. Or you could just do the work and get there based on merit. Seriously, enough is enough. These students have been brainwashed to think that there's some entitlement based on people's skin color or sexual preference. It's not that way. It may have used to have been that way decades ago at best, but it's not that way in the marketplace. Britz went on to say she's worried lawmakers are using concerns about workforce development to disguise efforts to regulate what students learn in their classes. Quote, it's so evident that they're targeting it because of what the content is, she said. Well, is the content really necessary? Because it doesn't seem like it is. Normally, we wouldn't regulate the content if we didn't have a lot of extremists running around in the faculties, creating problems, brainwashing students at the expense of the government that's financing these institutions. We wouldn't have to have this. I really wish we never had to have any kind of qualification of curriculum. Let people really be good at what they do. Let teachers learn to become great, have great professors that inspire people for the rest of their lives. I had a teacher, I think it was in the 5th grade, Mr. Sensi. He was great. He was a great teacher. I really liked that guy. I remember his name. I can't tell you why he was so great because I actually don't remember, but I remember certain teachers I had. I had Miss Pickford in the 1st grade, Miss Anderson in the 2nd grade. We remember our teachers, but the teachers shouldn't be indoctrinating students. They should be helping these kids get to the next part that they need to get to in life. The Texas Senate Higher Education Subcommittee hearing happened just days after the governor-appointed Texas A&M University Board of Regents directed its flagship institution to eliminate dozens of certificates and minors. That included an LGBT studies minor that drew criticism from conservative activists and lawmakers. As the Texas Tribune reported, the board called for the elimination of the programs despite faculty opposition because they didn't have high enough enrollment according to new metrics administrators created. Okay, so if the classes are not exciting enough that they get decent enrollment where students want to participate in them, why should the classes continue? If they're really important classes and you can point to this is an important class for everyone's future, okay, but if you're not going to have enrollment for it, maybe it's not that important. Creighton praised the changes at Texas A&M University on Twitter and described it as a harbinger of what's to come next session. I got to follow this guy on Twitter. I'll follow him right now. You better believe I'm going to follow him. This guy is breaking ground over here. UT Austin Associate Professor and American Studies Chair Lauren Gutterman, who attended the hearing, said she's concerned about upper-level administrators making decisions about courses without faculty input. Usually you would just kind of leave it to the faculty, the experienced professors, to decide, like, well, what courses should we be teaching? What do these students need to know? But when the faculty can't be trusted because they've gone so far into crazy town and they're not concerned about the students' future, only that they can convince students of a radical ideology, that's when lawmakers have to step in. That's when administrators have to step in and say, okay, faculty, we're pulling back on your academic freedom. You could forget your academic freedom. It's time to make sure you're not damaging students. Gutterman, who researches LGBT history, said she also rejects the idea that LGBT studies minor at A&M does not have value just because enrollment isn't high. She said it helps students think critically about and analyze issues central to society. Quote, trans rights, abortion, birth control, marriage, these are all issues that are central to political and cultural debate today, she said. Aren't you supposed to go to college to get a degree so that you can get a good job and have a good life in your future and show people that you're a productive member of society? I don't know that focusing on trans rights and abortion and birth control is really something that would tell a future employer, you're qualified, you should be trusted, here's some responsibility, here's a career, here's corporate resources, do what you will with them. I don't know. I don't really see the two connecting. I think the lawmakers do have a point. I'm starting to get convinced. Gutterman added she's worried lawmakers want to limit faculty control over what they teach. Quote, I'm also really concerned that our state lawmakers are going to try to use the language of DEI and SB 17 to try and prohibit teaching about certain topics and constrain academic freedom, she said. Pena with Texas AFT said he also thinks academic freedom in higher education is going to be at stake during the next legislative session. Well, it does sound like if they're going to take away your ability to decide what you teach students, that yes, professors, it's time for you to either start backing off or make some kind of a deal before you have absolutely no authority over what you teach if you teach in the state of Texas. And other red states are going to adopt this as well. And with a new administration coming in the federal government, this could be sweeping changes throughout the country. We'll watch it, and I'll cover it on this channel. Quote, the politicization of K through 12 is an issue that I think a lot more people are familiar with and have exposure to. But we've seen that politicization extends into institutions of higher education, he said. Quote, we think this upcoming legislative session is likely to be tougher than we've ever seen so far. Creighton, for his part, said more changes are needed at the college level to dismantle DEI, even in the wake of SB 17, which he described as, quote, the strongest ban on DEI in the nation. Quote, while there's been significant progress, last week's hearing underscores the need for additional reforms to hold taxpayer-funded institutions to the highest standards to ensure that merit and achievement are prioritized. And that's according to Creighton in a statement he said after the hearing. They are not playing around in Texas. Okay, back to changes already being made at the University of North Texas. University of North Texas faculty slam university for removing references to race and equity in course names and course descriptions, changing course descriptions. If you're a professor, like this is the one thing you have in your life. You have control over what you teach. You have control over how you present your ideas. It's really what these guys live for, and it's being changed out from under them. They have nothing they can say or do about it. Catherine Mansfield found out that the title of her spring semester course, not the one she was taking, the one she was teaching at the University of North Texas, has been changed via email. The graduate level class that she taught to seasoned teachers, she's a teacher, a professor teaching experienced teachers who were trying to earn a master's degree in educational leadership, used to be called, quote, race, class, and gender issues in education. Now it's going to be titled, quote, critical inquiry in education. The course description was also changed. Before, the course said students would learn how to be culturally responsive to their own students and how to debunk stereotypes and negative views about students going to school in places where race, class, and gender inequities still exist. Now the course says students will critically examine current topics related to providing leadership for various student groups, which is to take the ideological slant almost out of there completely. It's forcing the professor to really focus on and teach something that isn't ideologically sourced. The course change was one of at least 78 edits that UNT, the Denton campus with 47,000 students, made to course titles and descriptions in the College of Education's graduate program. The university also made around 130 edits to undergraduate courses in the same college. In an email obtained by the Tribune and first reported by the student newspaper NT Daily, the changes were made after administrators learned of a directive that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick gave to state lawmakers ahead of the upcoming legislative session to examine programs and certificates at public higher education institutions that maintain diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and, quote, expose how these programs and their curriculum are damaging and not aligned with the state workforce demands. Because keep in mind, you're training teachers, and who's paying those teachers? Could it possibly be the government? And it affects those teachers, but it also affects the students of those teachers. Like, this is the population of the students of Texas. This is a big deal. The directive builds on Senate Bill 17, a state law that eliminated diversity, equity, and inclusion offices on university campuses and prohibited state universities from using funds to support DEI efforts. The law, which went into effect in January, did not apply to course instruction and research. According to the email from Professor Lak-Tse Wong to other faculty in the UNT College of Education, administrators decided this was the best way to protect faculty from being further targeted because course titles and descriptions are public-facing, meaning that the public get to see them. And yeah, there are a lot of people watching what these people are doing right now. So if they want to avoid complaints, they better start backing off. Faculty have until fall 2025 to adjust their courses to comply with the new course descriptions, according to the email. These course edits are just one example of how faculty at UNT feel university administrators are overreacting to SB 17, according to interviews with faculty and emails obtained by the Tribune. Faculty say that by reviewing syllabi and courses, the university is over-complying with a law that doesn't apply to such a step. A university spokesperson denied the changes were related to SB 17 and said the changes to course names, content, and readings was part of an effort to ensure the curriculum is in line with state teaching education standards. But regardless of their intent, the UNT administration conducted a campaign of censorship of content and in more than 200 courses, according to Brian Evans, president of the Texas Conference of the American Association of University Professors. Quote, it's censoring what topics students can discuss and think critically about. In order for students to have the freedom to learn, faculty need to have the freedom to teach. Well, they're not going to have the freedom to teach. You guys overdid it. If they hadn't have pushed so hard, if they hadn't have said, well, we have some power, we can abuse it here. Let's push our ideological agenda. Let's force it on the students. Let's grade the students based on agreeing with our ideological agenda. That is the ultimate abuse of power. If you can force students to agree with your ideas, and if they don't agree with your ideas in their response to your coursework, then you'll give them a bad grade and they won't get their degree that they need for the rest of their lives. So you guys go ahead and abuse your position. But this is what's going to happen. Eventually, lawmakers step in and they say, no, we're not doing this. You guys went too far. And that's exactly what happened. Other faculty, including Mansfield, feel the edited course titles and descriptions are administrators' way of preparing for what's to come in January when lawmakers come back to Austin. Since January, UNT administrators and their counterparts at universities across the state have closed DEI offices and reassigned staff to new roles. 3 faculty senate subcommittees at UNT focused on faculty of color, LGBT faculty, and women were closed, as well as the Multicultural Center, which housed multiple student services. Library staff were told they can't host events for Pride Week. While students protested the changes, faculty said they were especially taken aback during a faculty senate meeting last month when Chief Compliance Officer Clay Simmons said the university was interpreting the law to include exceptions to the carve-out for teaching and research. Quote, so if you're doing research on homelessness, you have to be very careful if you're going to focus on a certain identity within homelessness, according to Simmons. So if you're looking at LGBT homeless individuals, then you'll have to make sure that that is narrowly tailored within the scope of the work. They're not fooling around anymore. Texas has really had it. And Texas has looked at this and said, okay, we're going to keep moving the ball forward until someone stops the Texan lawmakers. And it doesn't look like they're going to get stopped. They are going to wipe DEI, not just out of the colleges and universities and their programs, but out of the curriculum, out of the K through 12, out of the entire state of Texas. Simmons went on to show a presentation slide that said, quote, classroom lessons on DEI topics must be limited to elements of the course. For example, a class on mathematics may not include an activity on SB 17 prohibited topics, whether graded or not. Simmons told faculty that research would not be exempt unless it contributes to generalizable knowledge, a federal definition that applies to research findings that can be applied to a larger population than those studied in the particular research. So you can teach a lesson and use something as an example. That's generalized knowledge. But that knowledge that you gain should apply across the board. Like when we do a test saying this train's going at 90 miles an hour and that train's going in a different direction at 210 miles an hour. I know there are different speeds in the trains and you add them up. But the point is, you're not learning about trains. You're learning about the differentials of speed and how quickly these two objects reach each other. It's generalized knowledge. It applies whether they are trains, spaceships, cars, or helicopters. That's generalized knowledge. Last week, PEN America, a New York-based free speech organization, slammed Simmons for these comments, calling it, quote, the most extreme case of overcompliance with a censorship law we've ever seen. Quote, making up provisions in SB 17 that do not exist is the hallmark of a higher education system that has gone totally rogue, said Jeremy Young, PEN America's Freedom to Learn program director, in a press release. Quote, SB 17 already restricts diversity initiatives and programming on campus, which is bad enough. But by extending the reach of this law into areas explicitly protected by the legislation itself, UNT is not only misinterpreting the law, but also putting faculty members' academic freedom in severe jeopardy. Academic freedom ultimately really belongs to the students. The only purpose of professors having the ability to have academic freedom to teach what they want to teach is to benefit the students. He's right, though. This is putting the academic freedom of the professors completely at risk to the point where they're losing their academic freedom. It's sad to see it go, but you can't have academic freedom if you have such negative, destructive intentions for the entire student population, especially these professors that are teaching graduate courses to other teachers who are teaching even younger students. Completely inappropriate. You guys have blown it. Adam Briggle, no relation to Adam Post, a professor and director of graduate studies of philosophy at UNT, said the university's willingness to preemptively self-censor when the law doesn't require it is troubling. Quote, "I'm losing faith a little bit that UNT would ever stop this slide," he said. "When do we actually push back? Where's the line here? Because you can see how little by little this could become a total violation of academic freedoms." He's correct. He's Adam, so of course he's correct. He's called it completely the way it is. You guys pushed way too far. You broke the system. Now these guys have to remake a new system where professors do have some academic freedom, but within certain limits, because you exceeded the limits. You damaged multiple populations of students. You've created a lot of poison in the society. It needs to be corrected. The state isn't going for it anymore. And that's why Texas lawmakers are saddling up and taking care of business. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.